Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here. It is our very first ever LAC Summit, and we have a whole week of sharing and learning. So I hope to see you come back again and again because each of our sessions are going to be such excellent learning opportunities, including our session today, which is with Tim from AISG. And before we jump in with Tim's session, I just want to take a moment to tell you a little bit about this summit, why we're doing it, and who we are. So my name is Emma Burns. I'm the coordinator of professional learning at Consilience Learning, which is the company behind the Learning Analytics Collaborative. We're also the sponsor of this event. So it would be great to see, like in the chat or with your cameras on, who is already in the LAC. Yeah, lots of us. And that's, I think, what makes the LAC so special and what we're trying to really celebrate with this event is this community that we create. And the idea is that we'll learn and grow faster and better when we do it together. And oh, Rick Perry, not yet. Well, don't worry, Rick Perry. You'll after today and Tim's session, you'll be contacting us, I'm sure. Okay, so for anybody who doesn't know, what is the Learning Analytics Collaborative? Well, we are a platform and a service for schools who want to use learning analytics to improve and transform. So if you have any questions about this, please just reach out after the call and we can arrange a demo call and show you some of our platform. But basically, our mission is to support schools to build cultures of data use. We help schools to use data to make an impact. And the way that we do that is that we collect all the data that you have in your school, not just your academic grades, also your demographics, well-being data, anything you've got, we collect it and we collaborate with you to figure out the best way to present that data as information. Then we teach the users in your school how to use that information. So we provide protocols and tools so that the community can gain insight about your learners. We have over 100 visualizations that we've developed for schools, and every single one of them has been customized to answer the questions that each school has. So when you join the LAC, you come with your data, and we probably already have a way of presenting that information for you. And if we don't, we'll figure it out with you to give you those answers. So we have dashboards for teachers who want to get to know their class, dashboards for specialists like EAL and learning support teams, dashboards for admin, board, HR, and even dashboards for parents and students so they can see their learning progress over time. We have got over 50 schools in the collaborative, and we're all about sharing the learning. So when one school develops a use case, we share that information with other schools so that everyone can learn and grow. And we do that by publishing case studies and sharing protocols in our learning centers, things like that. For example, we even have a virtual summit. And that's where schools can share how they're learning and growing and developing those cultures of data use. So I'm delighted to kick off this session for the summit with Tim Evans, who is working at AIS Guangzhou. And Tim is the Learning Technologies and Data Coordinator. And their school has been with the LAC for a few years now. Tim is actually an LAC super fan, so he presents with us at different conferences. You may have seen him presenting with us at ACAMAS. And he's going to be sharing how their journey to building that data culture. So thank you so much, Tim, for being here and sharing with us today. And I'm over to you.
Thank you, Emma. I'll share my screen. If someone could just say if they can see.
We can see your screen.
Perfect.
And one thing I forgot to mention is that as we go through this session, if you have any questions, raise your hand at any time, and Tim or I can take that question. And then we'll also have a chance for questions at the end. Okay, or you can put them in the chat too. Thanks.
Thank you, Emma. Good afternoon, everyone. I know there's a few people. I think it's good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to some of the people attending now. What I'm wanting to do today is just basically tell a story almost about what we're doing, where we are, some of the challenges we faced, and how we possibly overcame them. As Emma mentioned, we've had the LAC now for about 3 years. But this year, you'll learn in a minute now that this year is really when we've really pushed it out, and we're looking to see how we can get it in the hands of teachers. To give you a bit of a background about myself, and I feel this gives it another dynamic because where my background is in tech integration. So I'm really trying to look at the LAC and a data dashboard as another piece of technology that supports teacher learning. So I'm trying to look at how we integrate other technologies, and in the same way how we can get LAC in the hands of teachers. And some of the things we'll discuss will be around training, around time, where we gather feedback, and how that actually looks. So if I skip here, you can grab the QR code there, as I mentioned. We'll be sharing this. So the goals today, as I said, we want to share where we currently are. We're looking at the idea of strategy, okay, and what we're trying to get strategic with it, and it's involving various people within the community, and then actually what data culture looks like, and particularly how it looks like here. So for context, okay, I think this is important to understand a little bit more about us. We're a non-profit school. We've been around a while now, with about 1,200 students now. I think we've just topped 1,200. We have 2 campuses, so there's elementary and secondary. This adds a different dynamic as well when it comes to building a specific culture. And then also we're an IB World School, so we've got lots of different data that we're gathering, be it your MYP, be it's grades, attendance, and we'll look at that. So what do we actually want to achieve? As I mentioned, there's a lot of data there, but I'm looking at it again from that tech standpoint, in the sense it needs to add value to teaching and learning. It needs to guide instruction. How can teachers use it? So the idea then, it's starting with teachers. We want teachers to be using, and then hopefully then where we can involve students, caregivers and parents, get access to that data as well. And then also what we're trying to do now, we're being more strategic with it this year, is giving dedicated time for teachers to get into the data, to get into the dashboards and start analyzing it and looking at what they can take from it. I'm a firm believer that teachers, I say buckets are so full. So we need to make time. We can't just push it out there and say, look, here is another piece of software, here's another spreadsheet for you, or whatever you're using. We want to actually start dedicating more time for them to look at it. That started then. We're a WASC school, so our WASC goal 1, and they're in no particular order, but this just happens to be WASC goal 1 is around data. So we want to develop and embed a culture of data-driven teaching and learning. This is a 3-year cycle kind of thing where we actually look at these goals. But the fact that it's a school-wide goal is now making it visible to everyone. This is externally visible as well. So families, caregivers, students, if they wish, all faculty and staff are aware that we have 6 in total, and one of those goals is data. By doing this, I feel it adds value, and no one ever rings me, and my phone's just rang. It adds value to that idea of this is what we do, this is what we're about, and this is what we're wanting to achieve. So why are we wanting to do this now? The idea is we're data rich, and I think all schools are. Okay, we're gathering data all the time, be it anecdotal, be it academic, be it holistic data. We have a lot of data. And you'll also find that we do have individual teachers who are managing that data. Would be it in spreadsheets. We have a science teacher here who's absolutely amazing, has this spreadsheet that she's been using for years. So that idea of getting it centralized, we wanting to use people like the science teacher I mentioned, get them involved in this conversation around what do these dashboards look like. And the idea then of asking teachers to manage that is challenging. Like I said, that bucket is full. Will teachers do it? Some will. However, if we can manage that data, we can make it that bit more accessible. And with a hope then that it guides planning, it guides any personalization, any differentiation, anything that the teachers are doing in the class, they can start to use that data to inform instruction. We're also wanting to use it as a reflective tool as well. It's a great way to look back on previous years. I always say in education, we're lucky that every summer it's like we turn the page, we get to do it again and do it better. So it's a great way of using that data. We actually go in at the beginning of the school year to look at last year's school data. It's great for teachers to learn about new students they may be coming into their cohort, or it's a way of them just to look at what was going on in their classrooms and how that can how it can they can change practice with a hope as everyone for growth and development. So as I mentioned, this is data that we have. We have lots and lots of data, and we're map testing at the moment. And there's the report grades, there's WEDA testing, our EAL team. Panorama is surveys that we push out to students, faculty, and caregivers. F&P, so teachers at F&P testing twice a year. Then we have your daily attendance, we have demographics, we use Fear Across. So we have a lot of information in there. CPONs we're using for child protection, but again, there's tickets in there, there's flags in there, there's alerts in there, there's a lot, be it around behavior or academics. Student care discussions, again, they're gathering data with our student support services team. We have our IB schools, so we have the DP data. Again, a lot of data is in there. Measuring our mission, Emma mentioned the dashboard then at board level. So we have that panorama data, we have the academic data, so we have the KPIs then that bring all that together. University data, listening groups. Okay, we have various listening groups throughout the school. And as we're just going through MYP accreditation, we have a lot more data now around IB ATLs, particularly at the MYP level. So we have all of this data. So what we're wanting to do is to bring it into one place and make it that bit more accessible. How did that look? It's ongoing. Okay, so the session's not called How to Build a Culture of Data Use. It's what we're actually currently building, and we'll continue to build it. But we're really taking our time with it. Last year was a new role. The data coordinator piece of my role was a new role. But we spent the year reflecting on the data we have. What's the purpose of gathering it? We went back, and if I was to go back a year ago, there was even more data here, especially within that data. We were map testing 3 times a year. We're now map testing twice. We were science map testing. We're no longer doing that. Panorama was a 50-question survey to caregivers. It's now 30 questions. So we looked at the data and looking at it from a lens of what is the purpose of gathering this data. We've all had surveys that take us forever to fill out. Well, some of our testing felt that way, and it wasn't just teachers, students were commenting on it. Like it's just another survey, it's just another test. And on reflection, I think that's because we weren't seeing how that data was being used. So it was a massive community task, basically, where we involved even parents when it came to the survey that they were taking. We involved them in how that survey actually looked. So we wanted to ensure that the data that we're gathering is actually going to be used. We also looked at the data, just cleaning it up. Emma and everyone at the LAC team will say it needs to be clean data. It needs to be ready to pull, to filter, to sort, to understand. And then that made it more accessible for us when we put it into the LAC. You will know any dashboard that you're using has to be simple to use. And where I come from, that learning technologies background, we're always looking at interface. We're always looking at how teachers will log in. So we're a Microsoft school. LSE allowed us to just log in with Microsoft single sign-on. So again, it wasn't a new login for teachers to learn. We could quickly add it to Microsoft Teams as a shortcut. We have the AISG Hub, which is our SharePoint homepage. We can add it to this. So if a teacher is in Teams, they can just go click, 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 and now they're straight into the student dashboard when it comes to looking at their classes. It was easy. It's easy to filter. And that, again, was just building and making that accessibility piece that bit easier. And I will keep mentioning that idea of it being integrated into the classroom. It's integrated into teaching practice. It wasn't, and it isn't just a standalone thing. Data isn't a standalone thing. We shared it from the very beginning that this is what we're wanting to achieve. This is what we're doing. As I mentioned, it's part of our strategic goal, and it's purposefully there. Would it happen anyway? Yes, I'm sure it would. However, by naming it, by giving it a place, giving it a title like that, it makes everybody almost accountable to it. With that, then, it gave us the opportunity to just have that common language. We refer to it as a whole school goal. We refer to it as a data goal. And then we got buy-in from faculty, or hope we got buy-in from faculty. And what we were doing then is we had working groups, again, voluntary, anybody interested in joining the data team. And it surprised me. People did. I was worried because there's innovation teams and things like that, which sound a lot cooler possibly. However, we got teachers that were interested in it, and they were around the table from day one. I would say day one this time last year, where we just took that year just to reflect on what had been done and then look forward then on the purpose of what we're wanting to do. To make things a little bit more accessible, we had teachers get into student dashboard, and we just said just shallow data sets. The idea of like, let's just have a look at let's filter our math writ, and we'll compare it to our math grade level grading report cards, just to start, one, to introduce the faculty to the dashboard. This is how it works from a tech standpoint. You filter here, but it was also kind of a short win. I'll never forget the first time we did that, and the way that it was accepted. Like, people are like, okay, this is easy. Okay, I can click here, I can view this, I can access it. So that was a short win. And then what happens then is that we had teachers going away and exploring it more. With that, then we've just started to build in data dive times. It's, well, we're blessed here Wednesday afternoons. Every Wednesday afternoon, we have a couple of hours where students go home slightly earlier. We have professional development time. And every 6 weeks or so, we have a dedicated 45-minute block to look at data. Again, it adds that value about this is what we do. We value this. It's not a tool we want you to go and use in silos. And with that, we run the risk of it not being used, but also we run the risk of it possibly not being used in the way we want it to be. So by having that structure time, and I'll talk about protocols and how that time looks in a minute, but by having that time, again, it just adds value about this is what we do. This is just a tool that we use to support school as we want it to look. The training was a big one for us. It was that idea, not just training around this is how the tool looks, but also around protocol. We did this just last week on our return. The idea of a protocol, we use a protocol with 4 or 5 steps, and we dedicate 8 to 10 minutes on each step, and that's for a reason, because we want people to get through the whole protocol. It's important to complete a protocol rather than have deep conversations on two steps of a 5-step protocol. So all of this came around about training, and that training was whole school. It was senior leadership team. It's learning leaders who are academic leaders, student support, and then PLC, the Ls, who are our heads of department and grade level leads. Then we involved everyone. They had those. Obviously, it looks different at different levels and at different groups. However, everybody was involved with that. We focus, there's a lot of coordinators and leadership there. We focus on that as well, because the message then needs to come from grade level leads, heads of department, and things like that. So it kind of, again, it just strengthened that message of this is what we do, and this is what the value it can add. The idea of language I touched on earlier. The protocols we use, that again, I put there fostering similar conversations, but it fosters a common understanding of this is what we do. The protocol we use is the same in grade 2 as it would be in DP computer science. It's just the content and the conversations would look slightly different. And at the same time, then we leverage LAC. Piotr, some of you who know LAC, has been super supportive. So we were able to reach out to individuals there, and the support from them then just helped more me kind of thing. I know Piotr did also meet some faculty, but it was that idea of just having a guidance, and their roadmap was super supportive with that.
And Tim, just to ask a question in the chat, Daniel's saying, when you mention the protocol, do you mean something like the Atlas protocol?
Yeah, thank you for that question. For us, just a protocol of almost a conversation. These are the steps of the conversation that we want you to have, and the protocol could be, and we'll look at one in a minute, the idea of like select your data, celebrate specific things. Were there possible questions? Is there areas for improvement? All with the idea of getting to the end, which is actionable steps. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But the idea of coming out of this 1 hour block with something that we can take, something not tangible, but something that isn't just looking at a spreadsheet and looking at a load of numbers. It's coming from, it could be something like I need to explore changing my groupings in a classroom, or I need to explore possibly doing something slightly different with this piece of content or something like that. Next, I want to talk about teaching is a work of art or science. And this is an interesting one, because I get to go into classrooms daily, and teachers a lot of teachers would say teaching's art. It's the way that we teach and everything. But it's, for me, it's also the idea of it's actually a science. And this is where that data piece comes in. There's some of you may know Will Kirkwood. He's at Zurich School. I've read a lot of stuff that he's doing. He's done webinars as well, and he talks about it as well. And it's that idea of using data in the sense of a scientist. So he shared that a couple of 18 months ago, and it really resonated with me, that idea of using data in that lens. So we're looking at the data. It's almost like, okay, if I change this, what could happen? If I look at this specific data set, what is it telling me? And it's that idea of, I don't want to say trial and error, although it kind of is. So, okay, I mentioned the groupings. So if you look at it, right, I'm going to play around with the groupings. And that's what we're wanting teachers to have, that kind of mindset of, okay, what happens if I do this? Right, let's have a go. Let's see it. And it may be, if you have a superhero group of teachers, a 4 or 5 group, one may go away and give it a go and feed it back to the 4. But we want people to have the confidence to do that. And I think that's something that we're slowly building. It's a tough one. I'll be honest with you. It's a real tough one for teachers to do, because I think in the world of teaching, we're so used to, or we feel about perfection. It has to be perfect. Introducing technology to classes, if there's anything around coding or computer science or hardware, setting up VR headsets, teachers quickly go into a little bit of a shock and saying, oh, that's not going to work, kind of thing, because they want their classes to be perfect. But with technology, there's a mentality of, we're going to give it a go. let's see what happens with this. If the VR headsets don't work, we're going to learn from it. If this coding doesn't work or this robot doesn't go anywhere, we're going to explore why. And that's what we're trying to do with that data piece as well, where we're actually looking at what we can actually do with the data. Talk a little bit more to that. It's that gradual change. We have to take our time with it. People say everybody likes change, but no one wants to be changed. But it's that idea of building a culture where we're not going to judge you. Okay, we want you to use the support networks in the school. We want you to try and do certain things, but we want you to remain curious, especially with that data, because we want you to explore it. We've added that now to our goals. Our teachers have 3 goals. 2 are strategic goal based and 1 is a personal goal. But we want it to include that if I changed this, so by putting that cell, it's in a document, but by putting that in there, it's making the teachers reflect on, okay, so I've done this for the last 2 years, or I've done this for however long. What happens if I change this? And where possible, it's based off the data. So it's getting them thinking of what the data gives them, kind of thing, and the idea of them wanting to explore it more. Steve Barkley with his coach and says, if you do X action, then the students will do Y behavior. So it's that kind of idea that we want them. And again, it's based off if a teacher grows and improves and develops, we just kind of know that's what will happen with students. So we want the students to, and the students are center for everything that we're doing. So I talked about data protocols briefly. A lot of this is slightly repeating, but that idea of a uniformity, especially when it comes down to guidelines and vocabulary, it has us all off the same page. We have it in our faculty handbook around data. We have that data protocol in there that we use. It encourages teamwork. Part of the protocol is someone's on time, someone's taking notes, someone's leading the protocol. So if it's even if it's a group of 4 or 5, straight away during tasks. And then it kind of makes it on your own. So if I am going to change something, I'm not going to get stuck. It's the idea of we can discuss specific things. We have teachers saying, right, I'm actually wanting to get we talked about space earlier today, and the idea of a U-shaped classroom. Others were saying, well, why don't you try that and I'll try this, and we'll just see what it looks like in 3 or 4 weeks with the same students, kind of thing. So again, they're looking at that. They'll get their feedback will be from students, be it verbal or be it by a form or something like that. And what it also does, and it facilitates informed choices. We don't want people just to change their class design because they decided Monday morning to do that. It's come off the back of some data that they've gathered, some data that they've analyzed, and a protocol that they may have run. So we want everything to be, where possible, data informed. Here's a protocol then that we've started to use. Okay, it's very much coming from the idea of what, so what, now what kind of thing, which I quite like, just thinking of it from that perspective. To break it down a little bit, it looks more just the idea of assumptions. We sometimes assume things, and it's happened to me before. I went there recently. A teacher was telling me, oh, those grade 8 boys, we've all heard it, those grade 8 boys are absolutely wild. Well, I went into the class 2 or 3 days later, and the class was absolutely fine, perfect. But it was actually afterwards that I realized, oh, actually, that was that class that I thought. That, I mean, I've jumped to a conclusion, I've jumped to assumption, and that's what we do. It's in our nature to do that. So that's the hardest thing when it comes to looking at data. A lot of times we ask teachers to look at data, no names, no genders, nothing. Sometimes we have all of grade 5, look at all of grade 5 data, not their specific class, because we assume that it's Mr. Evans's class, that those students are going to be like that. So it's that idea of not being influenced by anything like that. So the first step, and you can, I'll share this, and you can dig into it deeper. And there's a lot of more research on it than just me presenting it, but it's observing the data. Okay, what do we see? What are facts? What are the specific data? And we try and, as I mentioned earlier, have narrow data sets. So we're actually looking at we're looking at literacy. We're not looking at grade 5 academic data because it's just so much there. So we're looking at what we can see, what can we observe. The next step is even breaking that down even more, then is selecting that specific data. This is where LAC's great. You can filter stuff. And then with that data, we can start we'll start to make an assumption. So we'll start to think of it like, oh, what does this data do? What basically we're adding meaning to it. This is the piece where most conversation actually happens. Okay, and this is where it's best done in a group of about 4 or 5 individuals, where we're looking at what the actual data does. Oh, I pasted that in twice there, sorry. What we're doing then is the drawing conclusions phase is we kind of make a generalization, okay, based on our assumptions and beliefs. But it's not always accurate. So we're wanting to double check that with the data. What is it actually saying us? Are there any trends? Are there anything that we can see? We ask ourselves questions as well, and we put it in here. What data is missing? Because sometimes there is something missing. We may see a student drop off at a specific time of year, but we haven't actually got the attendance piece. We get a lot of it here just in our region around that January and February. With Chinese New Year, we do get a lot of students missing data, missing academic time. And that's one of the reasons we looked at our map data. We were testing 3 times a year, and that's that. Well, it's the winter testing window. We dropped it because we just had so many students who were missing those 3 days we needed for testing, let alone makeup kind of thing. So it was one of those. And then what we're wanting to do then is that action piece. And this is the most important for us, is out of that conversation, we've had 40-minute protocols, we've had 90-minute protocols. But the idea is that you come out of there with the idea of, now what? This is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to look at. Then now what could be, okay, I'm actually going to go and find out more about attendance. I want to find out more about attendance for these students. It happened here. We're looking into attendance of our athlete students, where we feel are possibly missing quite a bit because we're APAC schools, so they're missing a lot of time there. But again, we need that data. So that wasn't an actionable step from a protocol. Other teachers we know have looked at class groupings. They've looked at what books they have in their classroom. They've looked at various things that they can change tomorrow. I say that tongue in cheek, but what can I change now, kind of thing? And possibly then what could be more of a long-term thing? So what we're wanting to do is wanting to get all that data, put it all together and try and make it, well, like I said, make it accessible, but it's actually, how is it being used to benefit our students? We're not collecting data for the sake of collecting data. We're using it because we can impact teaching and learning. We can improve teaching and learning. And interesting, a few quotes here. Not everything that counts can be counted. So not everything is just numbers that we're putting into LAC. We have a lot of panorama data, anecdotal data, teacher interviews, teachers, students. The best resource is our teachers. And again, we're trying to make sure that just because it's bad data, if you want to call it, map testing is a prime example, where we have parents, we have students worried because of a one-off map test on a Monday morning. However, it's a big picture. If I go back to this, is all this data coming together to give us a better insight, rather than just presuming or just assuming that one data set is the whole story. This is a nice one, I think. The idea that everybody needs to be on board. And it's tough. But it takes time, especially in international schools with a turnover. A lot of people say, oh, it's hard because of the turnover. Well, I think it's actually an opportunity, because teachers come in August and this is what we do. And it could be something that you've only done for 6 weeks, but possibly come in thinking this is what we do. So it's easier to hit the ball running with stuff like that if things have been put in place well in advance. Here's a nice one, and I'll talk more to this one. Culture eat strategy for breakfast and technology for lunch. And I want to highlight that technology piece because it's super important. And I think I've got a video here, and earlier it didn't work. So short for time, I'll just...
You know, you can please some of the...
Can you hear that, Emma? Or anyone?
Yeah, we can hear
Perfect.
that. We
Thank you.
are running low on time too, Tim.
Okay, I'll be super fast. I just thought this was interesting from a
People-
perspective of tech integration.
Some of the time, what's found is that you've got to start with the customer experience and work backwards to the technology. You can't start with the technology and try to figure out where you're going to try to sell it. And I've made this mistake probably more than anybody else in this room.
So that I found is interesting, the idea of tech integration, and don't go away. And I know of a couple of people, and ourselves included, started to do this to make sure that your data is clean and it looks good and it's filtering without thinking of the customer. And for me, in this perspective, the customer is actually our faculty, it's our teachers. So you need to loop teachers in. Is it something that's accessible for them? Is it to a certain degree? Do they need it? Do they want it? Kind of thing. We know we can phrase that and make it something that adds value, but teachers need to be involved in this piece. We cannot just say, look, here's LAC or here's a data dashboard, do this. They're the teachers and they're the people that we want to use it. Time is a tough one. Okay, if we could make time, teachers would be happy, but we'd probably give them more to do, unfortunately. The quality of the data, training our teachers, okay, how to look at the data, how to navigate, how to filter, and that idea of resistance to change. It takes time to sell that why and what we're doing, but to dedicate time to that is I feel it was beneficial for us. Moving forward, I really want to look at that tech integration piece, so how we can do it, and it is just another support tool. In the same way of all the digital platforms that we access they're there to make life easier. Digital platforms more often than not are called solutions, so they need to be a solution to a problem that we feel there is, and that could be just accessibility of data. We're going to take our time and we'll continue to do that. Next step now is we want to get students into LAC. We've not done that. And parents, we don't feel there's an urgency for parents because we don't think there's a demand for it. So it's one of those, we're starting with a customer and it will be a solution to a problem that's not there. So at the moment, we're not thinking of onboarding caregivers, but students, I think, would be good. We want to give agency. We want them to actually take ownership of their learning. And if we can get some data sets in there that students can look at, especially on that ATL piece, it will give another opportunity for them to look at their learning and hopefully, again, modify or change or plan on what their next steps are as well. I flew through the end there. I do apologize. Are there any thoughts, wonderings, questions? It was very much just what we're doing and how that looks here. I'm big on context. It's different at different schools. It's different with different individuals. By all means, reach out to me. We're happy. We've done that with the LAC. Emma mentioned about community, and I find community is a big draw for us for the LAC. Where we've connected. Someone I mentioned earlier, Will Kirkwood, was great. I was firing emails back and forward to him. Kevin Crouch at WAB in Beijing's the same. Feel free to do that. I can see Sydney's in the call as well. We've discussed it. But if there's any questions, do let me know, be it now or via an email or in the chat.
Thank you, Tim. It's so great to see that so many of the things that schools are experiencing is the same in all the schools. And so thanks for sharing those. And we have a question from Michael.
Hi, Tim. Thanks for that.
Hi, Mike.
More of just a comment or a reiteration. As I was listening to you talk, a couple of things came up for me, and just which I'm triangulating with your experience, and based on my experiences building dashboards like this, I just wanted to reiterate a couple of points that are really important in my opinion anyway. One of them is that last video clip you showed about the user experience, the user interface, and what that kind of looks like and how the user engages with that. I really feel that's a very powerful, important part of the process, that you have a clear idea of how you want that to look and work for the people, because that will that knowing that will help you a lot when you're identifying what's important in your dashboard, what teachers want to see, and so forth, because sometimes it can either enhance or be slightly limited by what you can do with the user interface. So I think that part of it's really important. And the second part is the whole data gathering and corralling and cleansing, and how important that is. As we know, data does not appear out of thin air magically, and oftentimes there's a lot of effort that needs to happen to get the data and to organize it and so forth. So that's a part I think that's really important in the process also. So, and you talked about that a little bit. So thanks for that.
Thanks, Mike. We've actually cut some of the data gathering that we were doing because we just didn't see there was complete value in it being used. And again, we involved the end user in that conversation as well. We could see we're gathering this data, but we're not using it. So we kind of edited some of our stuff. We changed some of our stuff on asking, what else would you like to know? What else would you like? And then we went to gather the data, or looked at ways that we could maybe gather data. We don't have our lower elementary school, don't do much around just check in. So we just put a form together, like a 3 or 4 question form that suited them, that suited those students. But again, it was a gap. Teachers requested it. We hope then that it will be used then.
Avoiding that data for data's sake, and making it so clear what the benefit is, because they're part of that building it from the very beginning. Do we have any other questions or comments for Tim?
I'm dropping my email address in the chat. By all means, there's a lot going on this week at our schools, let alone at this summit. So, but if there is anything you guys want to check in or ask, and I'm happy to get, even if it's onboarding. Like I said, we've had a great journey now with Puritan and over the last year of how that's looked. And
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Tim, so much for sharing your journey and giving us all so much to think about. And thanks. Oh, there's Sydney. Hi, Sydney. Yeah, great to see so many people here. We've got another one starting in a few minutes, so hope to see you guys at that one too.
brilliant. Thanks, everyone. I understand we're all busy, but thanks for making the time, and do reach out.
Thank you.